Hi there, welcome to the Colson Boutique Show. My name is Daniel Patterson. I'm very excited to be joined by one of the brightest, most passionate, innovative people on the wine scene. She is the president of the United Sommeliers Foundation, the CEO of the online wine course, and recently awarded the Wine Educator of the Year by the Wine Enthusiast, and featuring in their 40 under 40 tastemakers for 2020. Join us from LA, Cristie Norman. Thanks for joining us. How are you today?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us. And how are things over in LA today?
They're actually quite cold. I feel like I'm over there, which is strange.
It is very miserable here today.
It's not quite snowing, but it's not the regular 90-degree sunny days. So it'll be like this for about a month, and then we'll be back to normal.
Yeah. Very good, very good. Okay, now let's get to it. 2020 has been a crazy year, and at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, the hospitality industry, it took a severe hit. Now, rather than retreat, you created the United Sommeliers Foundation. Now, for those who are unaware, it's a charity set up to help mainly sommeliers within the hospitality industry. Did it surprise you to see such positive responses from the industry, with even the likes of Robert Parker's The Wine Advocate, Forbes, and Acre Auction House, to name a few, getting behind it?
I wouldn't say that I was surprised. Well, first off, we didn't intend to set out a foundation at the beginning. It really started with me and a master sommelier that I was hosting a class with. We were going to have a master class on March 16th that we had to cancel, of course, because everything got shut down the day before. And we were just chatting, and he said, how can we help the Somms? And I said, let's start a GoFundMe. Let's do a crowdfunding thing and figure it out. And so what I did was I called the most important, most reputable people in the industry that I know all over the country. So none of our board, I think actually there's two guys in Chicago now, but originally I had one person kind of in every major market in the US. And we came together because I'm 26 years old now. I was 25 when we got together, and I, needed the experience, the mentorship, and, just the legal know-how that these guys had, and those relationships in the industry. So when we needed press, when we needed Robert Parker's recommendation, and Lisa Parati Brown offered to write us an article. We have an MW on our board, right? And so did it surprise me? No. Was it difficult? More difficult than I thought to raise funds? Yes. The first month was a little bit slow. And then in April, we had our first large donation from Co-Brand Imports, and they donated $100,000. And that really kicked things off for us.
Amazing.
Really legitimized us. And super grateful for them because it just started, the role of what we were doing, because we had so many people that were in financial crisis and need. All these sommeliers have been at restaurants and specifically highly trained for this one craft, and usually, paid as servers or managers or something of the like. They're not millionaires typically. That's what I mean.
Sure.
Maybe some are, but it was a very, very difficult time. So I'm glad, because we were the only people that were doing it, and still are.
Yeah, and you're doing very well with it as well, aren't you?
I mean, we're trying. We've raised almost $1 million,
wow,
which is really exciting. But I want to help as many people as we possibly can.
Yeah,
so
sure.
It just takes more people hearing about it too, because I'm sure
Sure.
there's lots of people who've never heard of us.
Yeah, and that's what we're here to do, to help spread the word, make it more of a universal matter as well, So didn't you even get some form of like a backing from Jason Woodbridge's 100 Acre? Was there some like form of...
Actually, it's amazing. That's how we met on Instagram, right?
Right.
I'm pretty active on Instagram.
Yeah.
And on a random Tuesday, I posted about our GoFundMe, and there was a person who I didn't know, and they commented, Cristie, I want to help with the auction. Please call me. And so it was 10 p.m. on Tuesday night, and I gave him a ring. It was a California zip code, or not a zip code, a California area code. That's what I'm trying to say. And it happened to be the vice president of sales of 100 Acre Winery.
Wow.
And he had all of the relationships in Napa. We had this amazing woman named Sriti Fusio. She worked for Morlaix for a very long time, which is another prominent Napa winery. And so they sent out these, messages to their longtime friends and said, help us, source some donations for this. And then simultaneously, one of my friends for a very long time, who we also met on Instagram, but then in real life, his name's Cameron. His username was Chateauneuf de Pimp. And I reached out to him. It's not his username anymore, and somebody took it, but I thought it was brilliant. And he was in Alabama at the time. I had reached out to him and said, oh my gosh, your username is so cool. He ends up becoming the wine director at the sister restaurant of mine. So I worked at Spago Beverly Hills for the last 5 years, and he worked at Cut as the wine director. And so he had relationships with these auction houses, including Acre. And so Acre was really generous in giving us part of their buyer's premium. It's a rolling auction. So we have, they have a weekly thing that they do. And so, if things didn't sell in the first auction that we had, they would sell kind of along the way. And it was funny, a few weeks ago, Chris and I looked at the auction report and we're like, wait, did that just say $36,000? Like we didn't even know there was like things left in the auction, but things just kept rolling in, and it was very successful. But Jason Woodbridge is amazing. He donated $125,000 from a different charity auction that they hosted. They split it between us and another charity. I mean, he personally donated $20,000 of wine. They donated this really beautiful vertical of all of their 100-point wines. And it was absolutely incredible. So incredibly grateful for them. And, with everything that's happened too, with the fires up there, it's a very stressful time. And so we're trying to do fire relief for them as well.
Yeah, that's right. Because 2020, well, this year, I mean, it's just given us everything, hasn't it, really? And you mentioned, obviously, with the wildfires, I think this is the third or fourth year in a row now in Napa Valley. You've got some involvement there trying to help people over in the Napa Valley. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the USF, the United Sommeliers Foundation, was founded, in COVID-19 and immediately to support sommeliers in that. But our mission statement is to support sommeliers in financial crisis due to circumstances beyond their control. Mm-hmm. And so that means wherever the need is, right? Whether that means somebody's restaurant is destroyed in a hurricane, whether there is a giant fire and their tasting room burns down and there's a sommelier working at Harvest or working at a tasting room, I think that counts. And I've always had a very progressive view of what a sommelier is. We don't have any sort of certification requirements to pass. I think some people have been on the floor working at restaurants as sommeliers for years and they don't have any type of formal education. And that's fine for me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I found myself I've recently, I say within the last couple of years, taken up my WSET, courses. I'm up to level 3 now. But it can get quite intense after that. So I'm going to put that on the back burner. But I found that most of my experiences have come, and maybe you can relate to this as well, just through tasting a lot of different wine. And that's it. Just whether it's by itself, pairing it with a meal, whether it's with the company you're with, that's where you really get your experience from. Would you agree or maybe disagree with that? Or
Absolutely. I think that it matters what you're selling at your restaurant or what kind of tasting groups that you go to. I find that a lot of wine education, especially at the upper levels, you study so much that people never get to see or taste. Yeah. And it's kind of confusing. And for me, I don't really care how much a sommelier knows about Greece if they're not selling any Greek wine. I want to know how, they can sell me a really cool natural wine or, something different that I haven't seen before, a little gem or something. That really is what matters to me personally. So I think that anybody can become a sommelier if they study the basics of wine and then they learn about the products that they have. You know what I mean? Most definitely.
And it's fair to say you're not just a sommelier. You are an entrepreneur at heart with many exciting businesses, projects on the go. And as you mentioned, obviously you've got a very strong positive social media presence, and through it would seem that you have the dream career. You're pouring, serving, or were pouring, serving, tasting some of the finest wines in the world. However, that was not enough for you. You decided to take up the initiative, set up your online wine course. And from my understanding, this came about as you acknowledged that a great way to grow the number of wine drinkers would be to educate them, thus giving them confidence. Will that be correct? Or?
Yeah, I think the whole point of wine education that we miss the mark on is that we want to connect with people who don't know anything about wine. Yeah. And in order to do that, you have to make somebody feel comfortable. And for, in my experience working at one of the most expensive restaurants in Los Angeles, kind of well esteemed and really a much older crowd in terms of, it's like old Beverly Hills, you know what I mean? And what I realized was that wine education and income were not proportionally linked in any way. And nobody comes down from the heavens and tells you, oh, now here's this wine knowledge that's bestowed on you. It just doesn't happen.
That's true.
And so I wasn't a very good sommelier kind of at tables because people sometimes were just so taken aback that I was a young woman that was Asian. I mean, a lot of people just thought I was a hostess. And after a couple of years, it just didn't bother me anymore. And I just knew how to play with it and I could still have fun. Yeah. But in terms of teaching people things, I was not the best in person because it's a young woman, telling somebody what they do, maybe who's much older. It just makes somebody feel uncomfortable. And especially I wouldn't do that in front of guests, right? There's just no way for me to educate at the restaurant. Whereas, my boss who's older and a white guy, he could probably get away with some things, right? And people might even ask him, hey, how can you help me? But for me, it was like the opposite. And so I realized that teaching behind a computer screen was the best option for me. And honestly, I need those people to be educated before they walk into the door of my restaurant. Yes. And it's so funny because, people were just like, oh, is she creating a new certification program, yada, yada. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to make all of you guys more money. Exactly. I want people to be able to shop by region and not by brand. Does that make sense?
Massively.
Like if they, and to be able to communicate with wine professionals in a way where they can find them new fun things that they'll like and not have them beholden to the system of, PR companies that, wineries that can afford PR companies rather and sell their brand. Like you really have to have it's like having a driver's license, in my opinion. I think everybody should.
Great analogy for sure. You are right though, because again, if I'm a Bordeaux lover at heart, always will be. Don't get me wrong, I will digress through my Napa Cabernet Sauvignons, my Australian Shirazes, my Chateauneuf de Pape from the Rhone Valley. But like you mentioned, there are a lot of people out there who may not have that knowledge, where you may not need to spend the type of money you need to spend on a good quality Bordeaux if you don't have that affordability. But you can go to another region, say within France, like maybe like a Languedoc or a Provence or a Loire Valley, where you're getting that quality that you would pay for like a premium Bordeaux or Burgundy, but you're saving yourself maybe half the money you'd usually spend on one bottle.
Absolutely. I think it's just about showing people what their options are and allowing them the opportunity to try some of them, in their own markets or whatever, right? Because my wine course has been taken in like over 20 countries. So I can't recommend wines for every market, but I do have, the major things that you see out in the world. And I mean, it is, tailored for the US, but it still applies. You know what I mean? Like the wine 101 basics are kind of all the way out there. I just want people to be able to say, instead of, I only know a lemon. And so they're like, oh, I imagine if you only had a lemon your whole life and you said, I hate all fruits grown on trees. Yeah. That's what I feel like so many people do with wine. They're like, oh, I had this one white wine I didn't like, so I don't like white wine. It's so frustrating for me because I want to show them the world, and then they can make their own decisions. Definitely. And then communicate things like that. Exactly. You go to your local wine shop and say, hey, I love Opus One or whatever, but I can't afford it tonight. So what do you recommend? Yes. And it's so easy for us as wine professionals. I don't know if you can relate, but when somebody, when somebody tells you a recommendation, because I'm sure you get people asking you all the time for recommendations. Yeah. And so they'll tell you, oh, I like this brand or this wine. And then you can come back and say, try this, this, this. And that's really the power I'm trying to give people.
Massively, like you said, I would sometimes be on the phone, and even though we're doing it more from an investment standpoint, I will have a client who used to be prior to COVID, will be in a restaurant and say, right, Daniel, I'm in the Dorchester, I'm at Hyde Restaurant in Piccadilly Circus. What can I order? I'm looking at spending X amount per bottle. I'm thinking, well, if you're in that kind of restaurant, you need to be prepared to spend, several £100s. But sometimes if you even understand like a region, as an example, if you're drinking, say, from, let me think, like Pomerol, as an example, you don't need to spend money on like a Petrus or a Le Pen. If you could buy like a Legay, as an example. It's a funny name. People might be a bit awkward, but it's a good drinking wine, and you're paying a heck of a lot less money than what you would.
Get like an 05 Beauregard, right?
Yeah.
Like that's really affordable and reasonable, but still gives you all the little things that you like about it.
Exactly. And you mentioned, it's incredible that you're already in 20 countries. And even though, yes, it's more, I might be taking this out of context, designed for like the more American market, wine is it's a universal language. Irrespective of if it's in a French accent, if it's in Spanish, American, Chinese, doesn't matter. It's a universal language. But for yourself, you're a visionary. Where in 10, 15 years' time can you see that course going? Maybe not how many countries, obviously that's going to be just dependent on a myriad of factors, but where do you see your online wine course within the next 10 to 15 years?
Well, actually, I'm already working on the online sake course, which is with a master sake sommelier.
Oh, wow.
I'd like to do a beer course. I'd like to do a spirits course. I would like other people with different voices to do wine 101, like the introductory class like I have, but in their own style, because
Yes.
I speak to a very particular demographic of people. There's people that love my humor and the way that I am, but I'm actually a big proponent of other people teaching. I never discourage somebody from doing their own wine course or anything like that, because we all have our different spaces and we get to all work collectively on it, right? And so I'm working on a digital marketing agency for wineries. I think that's a huge problem, that they don't have really good marketing teams, doing really high quality work from a wine person's perspective. Because I find that a lot of marketing teams will just kind of market to general consumers and maybe don't do it in a way that appeals to wine lovers and wine drinkers. And so having somebody who can like bridge that gap, it's going to take a while for that. But yeah, creating all sorts of different courses, just having lots and lots of free content that's really high quality and fun. Like I love doing fun stuff. I want to have an entire album of wine raps, because
I'm ready to hit download and subscribe off the iTunes store. I'll be your first customer for sure.
I listened to Eminem my whole life. My babysitter listened to Eminem when I was in, 3rd to 6th grade or something. And
Okay.
I just loved it. And I always joked around about doing something like that. And, I did my first one last year, and it felt really good for my soul. I don't know if anybody else liked it, but it's an outrage.
Yeah. The only complaint, sorry to interject there, Cristie, but the only complaint I had, I was really getting into it and it was over.
I know.
I was like, what?
You know what? I watched a YouTube video that was like how to write your own rap. And within 12 minutes of the video, I was like off to the races, and I made the rap in about 45 minutes. And I was like, this is it. And so I texted my friend who's a EDM DJ, and he also does like trap music. He also made all the wine course music. So like every section has a different theme, and it's like designed to give you the feeling that I want it to give you. And he's incredible. And he made this track, and the track was just so outrageous. I mean, it's like a Migos song.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you listen to it. It has, the sound of glasses crashing. It's all custom corks popping, like everything. And so I said, I have to do a crazy video. And I only spent like, I don't know, $1,500 on the whole thing. I mean,
seriously?
my Yeah, no, my friend, she was in this leadership program that I was doing at the time. It was like a life coaching program. And so she goes, yeah, well, I'm a videographer. I can help. And, I'll do it for like $500. I was like, sure, that's perfect. She
Yeah.
rolls up with her own Red camera, at least $75,000 of equipment total. She just rolls up on set.
Wow.
And, I got a Ferrari for like a few
Yeah.
hours. It was super fun. Yeah, no, but I just love, and all of it came together within 2 weeks. Like it was out, it was edited in 3 days. Like we just did it just for funsies. And
It was really well
had no
done.
purpose.
Honestly, it was really well done. Drop that
I want to
album.
do more of that. I want to do more of that.
There seems to be more of a crossover between US and UK rap music. So, if ever you need that UK influence, you can reach out to me, okay?
Like, as his little cameo, you know what I mean? Little chorus interjection.
Exactly. Just ease me in gently. Look after me, but all right. One thing that seems evidently clear from following your career up until now is your natural desire to help and improve. Now, speaking for myself, prior to joining Colson Boutique, I found myself slightly disillusioned, I think is a way of putting it, with aspects of the wine world, some of which you've touched upon in terms of stereotypes, and there's a certain expectation of how people should look and so on and so forth. But based on your journey, if you could change 3 things within the industry, what would they be and why?
I would like sommeliers to be taught that they can teach other people and they don't need to be masters to do that. Because right now in the industry, people get so nitpicky at influencers and people who are doing their own wine education or whatever, and they aren't like esteemed. They aren't at a fancy restaurant. They don't have a high certification, and people just trash them. And I'm just like, we should celebrate them. So that's one.
Yes.
2, I would love for the wine industry to actually keep up with technology and create fun stuff and apps. I mean, literally kind of in the same vein, people who are doing fun stuff on the internet, making cute pieces of content, just kind of get made fun of. And you're supposed to fit into a box. And I've just never been like that. And the thing is, if we want to engage people, like I made these YouTube videos that are still up. You're welcome to watch them. They're called Adulting with Alcohol.
Oh, they're good.
They're like, yeah, well, they had super low production value. I mean, it was just me and my friend in my apartment, but it was a mix of wine education and comedy. And there were so many people that reached out to me and they said, oh my gosh, I learned this and I went and tried this. And it was because I was being stupid, and I was just being authentic, so that's 2. And then, I don't know, 3, I think that we need to expand wine education in terms of like what people will actually see in the market, because there's so much stuff that we study and we're supposed to, memorize all this stuff, but ultimately doesn't really matter that much. And I feel bad saying that because obviously it matters to somebody, like it's somebody's wine, but I'm saying the level of importance for us to memorize these useless facts and have this barometer. And actually, I want to share something on the same vein. So sure. I went to this program called 40 Years of Zen in Seattle, and it's with a bunch of scientists that, neuroscientists that measure the electricity in my brain. And I had a concussion from a car accident that I was not aware of, it was damaging to my brain. And my Broca's area, which is the area that helps you recall words from memory, it was damaged. And over the course of that week, they actually helped repair my Broca's area. It's much easier now. But I can't tell you what a failure I felt like I was, because I couldn't remember this vintage or this vineyard right off the bat. And I couldn't spit it out. If I could write it, I could do it.
Sure.
But it was so strange. It felt like I was being measured by how fast I could climb a tree, but I'm a fish, that expression?
Yeah, I love that expression.
And so definitely. I think that, encouraging people to learn about new things, become an expert in what they want, and you can still be an esteemed wine professional without knowing a tiny bit about everything, because that's really what I did. And I became a certified sommelier at 21 years old because I knew how to study, because I made connections, right? But in terms of the scheme of the world, I had no idea. But you can still get these certifications.
Yeah, that's an amazing achievement at 21 as well, because usually people, I believe, way into their sort of late 20s to mid 30s before they can get to that position. Especially, where you ended up working as well via Spargo's too. It was quite an achievement for yourself, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just saw the biggest wine list, one of the biggest wine lists in the US, and I wanted to work there. I just thought that it would be the best thing, and I told them, I would keep my head down and I would work really hard, and I didn't have any bad habits that they needed to unbreak or break. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I was a clean slate, and I was, I had a good attitude. I wasn't very vocal until later. But
yeah.
But yeah.
Like you said, you saw what you saw and you wanted to do, and if you believe it, you can achieve it, right?
Yeah,
so.
I have this saying of dream, declare, and deliver, and that's the 3-step process. And you dream first, and then you work backwards.
Okay, so long story short, over the summer, UK wine writer / TV show host / personality Joe Fattorini anonymously wrote and circulated often misogynistic and toxic WhatsApp missives under the pseudonym Wine Bitch. And that was basically targeting and bullying wine writers, tradespeople, Instagram influencers, etc., under the guise of satire, including many of his colleagues. Now, these messages got out. Fattorini tried to stem the bleeding by contacting the targets privately and apologizing. There was a bunch of cease and desist letters that were sent out too. And then we had the recent expose in the New York Times and various other press outlets highlighting the courts of master sommeliers and their archaic attitudes. As with many things in the world today, which requires such massive changes, which is, again, long overdue. What do you think is needed to change perceptions moving forward, as well as supporting the individuals affected?
I think people need to get loud and not worry that these larger forces are going to come toppling down on them. And I know it's very different in the UK. Actually, I know one of the women who is affected. She's a dear friend of mine. And nobody knows about this situation in the US. It was the first time I ever heard of it. And she told me about these messages. And, she was writing an article that she's still trying to get published, just talking about the bigger issue of bullying and misogyny in the wine industry. Because it seems as though the UK, it's much more difficult for women here. Yep. Well, as in the US here, you can still be successful and be very outspoken about certain things.
Yeah.
Especially because of this catalyst of the New York Times. Now, I think people are getting less scared. I haven't been very scared the past few years. I got actually a lot of hate, but it's kind of transitioning because people kind of see like, oh, okay, like this has been the way that she always was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that women need to keep speaking up and to call it out the way it is. And it doesn't need to be emotional. It doesn't need to be bad, but just factually. And that's what we need. And we need a leadership, because in the wine industry, at least what I've seen is that, there's no repercussions for some of these people who are abusive or, sexually harass women or whatever. Actually, I posted, there was a person who was, just being really terrible on like a Facebook comment. I ended up posting it, and all of these people messaged me and said, wow, this guy has done this, he's done this, he's done this, he's done this. I've reported him to the court so many times. And I posed the question to the court, hey, so are you going to let this guy sit the master's exam next year? Because that's what he's saying he's going to do. After all of these women have reported him, right? So it's like about the structures. There's not enough women in power. Being on a board myself now, I really see how much a board affects the entire industry. Right. The board, what it looks like, what it sounds like is totally different. I was the only woman on my board for a period of time. We started with 2, and then it ended up just being me for a little bit. And then we added 2 women who are incredible sommeliers and very well known, San Francisco and New York. And the vibe is different. Does that make sense? Even though we're on
Massively.
conference calls, you know, I think that it's always good to have a balance of different types of energies and different type of personalities. And especially when you're making very difficult decisions, how, you know, it's so important to have a lot of people that look different in the room. And it's so important. And so until we start doing that and really meaning it and really taking action and not just saying Black Lives Matter, not just saying, we support diversity, but really truly doing it and hiring these people and bringing us all in together in the same room and not at a different table. Until then, I don't think that things are going to change.
Absolutely. You make a great point. And obviously, I don't want for us to go too far down the political, fields here. But you're absolutely right, because a lot of what you've said there has now become more of a... It's become more of like a label than an actual movement. It's more, support the LGBTQ, support the Black Lives Matter, support, women's rights. There's people saying it, but what's actually going on behind it? It's,
it's the saying it on social media, but then silently, really nothing changes within the organization. Yeah.
But obviously there are women like yourself who, who's, again, really, you've worked in terms of building that following, and you're continuing to, build up critical mass for yourself, and you'll continue to enhance your reputation within the wine world. University, that's undoubted. But do you feel it would also help, not just from like the media standpoint and everything else, but for, say, sticking to the wine industry, say a figure of authority for women within the wine industry, say a woman or certain women who are in that upper sort of level of established, whether it's wine critics, wine journalists who make more of a stance on behalf of their female counterparts? Or do you think it's also a combination of education internally in this male-dominated industry?
I think that just by me existing, it's a protest. Me being successful and just being is, it's challenging to some people. Just the fact that I look like this and I've done what I've done.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing, not only using their platform, not everybody needs to be as an outspoken social justice person as I am. I'm somebody who really always sticks their neck out for people that I see that are, being hurt. I mean, I've always been like that. I don't know what it is, but it's like a compulsory thing. I have to, if I can do something, I try to always do it. But not everybody is like that, and that's okay. But I think that women who are successful, you work together, talk to each other. I'm in all these group chats with just women in my industry that I love and care about, and creating connection, creating community, and giving out. And when you've done all of those things, then, when you've really established yourself, speak out. But I would say, like, to young women who are coming up, like, you don't need to do this, you don't need to do this. If they don't feel comfortable doing it, then they shouldn't. However, I do believe that people in privileged positions do get to use that platform for good and for change. And there's many women who will come after me, and I hope to make the wine world a slightly better place for them if I can, Yeah,
definitely. No, well, we need to be the change that we want to see in people, don't we? So, yeah, good luck with that. And I said, we try to get behind ourselves, because I said, even here with, when you think of an investment broker, most people assume, males and alpha males and pumping your chest and whatever else. But, we've employed our fair share of women as well, because, again, we're big believers in equality, So, yeah, we're definitely with you on that movement, 100%. But, you are very engaging with your audience, and it's like you're creating a community of like-minded people, helping each other grow and learn in what's traditionally been that privileged industry. And timing can be key, and it feels like with the growing amount of people getting into wine and younger age demographic, that the stage is yours. Do you have a vision for an improved, more approachable and diverse wine market? And what would that look like?
Well, I mean, first of all, everybody would learn about wine, because the fact that young people right now will pay $22 for a cocktail, but they won't share a bottle of $50 wine between four of them,
Oh,
that's alarming. That's the way it is in the US. I don't know how it is in the UK right now, but for young people, the drink of choice are craft cocktails. They are,
yeah,
and they're made with some lame ingredients. I mean, like things that have been done. It's nothing special. It's not
no,
terroir. Like it's not, you know, and a lot of people just aren't drinking because they're um you know there's a stigma sometimes, right? And I want to promote this idea that you can enjoy in moderation, and wine is something that you can share among people, share with friends. I would like the wine industry to become as diverse as the people that are in it. Actually, one of my wonderful students and friends, her name is Kisana. She is from the Caribbean and she's in Brooklyn. And, I was chatting with her about her vision for the wine industry. And she was like, well, I really want to pair Caribbean food with wine because it's something that we normally don't have.
mm,
And she's speaking to a whole new audience of people, and creating these pairings. And, she's recommending things at the shop she works at. She's brilliant. She's still coming up in her wine education, but that's how we all do, right? We all
yeah,
start
yeah,
somewhere. And
yeah,
so I'm really excited because it's going to bridge this like intercontinental, food and wine with so many different things. And I think our vocabulary is going to get way bigger.
yes,
Everyone always asks me, what's the right term to use? And it's like, whatever you think, but we just have to be able to calibrate on the same level, if that makes sense. So my white peach should taste like your white peach.
yeah,
But if you wanted to throw in lychee, or a different fruit from your
melon
country.
or
I
yeah,
remember somebody, I heard this one time, somebody had said, oh, I think there's lychee on this, and somebody who was, I think, from Thailand said, well, what variety of lychee? Right.
wow,
And
wow,
wouldn't that be amazing for all of us to say, oh, actually it's this specific type of lychee, or it's this
yeah,
specific, right? And it's so
yeah.
funny because we'll say, oh, red apple versus green apple. Well, maybe we'll all start trying more diverse foods so that we can be articulate in these other types of experimental pairings and stuff that's being brought into our generation. I think that would be super cool.
It would be, because even some of my clients, they will laugh at some of the tasting notes. Today I was speaking to one client, and he's got an amazing collection, a lot of 100-point scoring wines, but a lot of them that he does collect, that he would laugh and go, "Oh, what is this wine made of this time? Indian potpourri, or crushed rocks, or cigar box, or saddle leather." And I say to him, yeah, you laugh and it does sound a bit absurd, but these critics are paid good money to give their opinion, and their opinion is valued, and they're educated for a reason, but like you said, sorry, go on.
As long as, oh no, I'm just saying, like, as long as we're all speaking the same vocabulary, you can say whatever you want,
Yeah,
like that's really the
exactly,
beauty of it. So as our
exactly.
industry becomes more diverse, we will have a more diverse group of people, vocabulary, foods, wines. It will just all, expand.
Definitely, definitely. All right, well, on to the more fun questions. I suppose to pick off one of your last answers there with your friend over in Brooklyn from the Caribbean, obviously wanting to look to pair that food with certain wines. Obviously, you had your song that you touched upon earlier, Cabernet and Caviar. What are some of the
Pairing, by the way, just for anybody watching or listening, not a good pairing.
if I can imagine.
Worst thing you can do. It's the greatest sin, in my opinion.
What would you actually prefer with caviar? Would it be beluga vodka, or would it be maybe champagne, or maybe a chardonnay?
I'll do a high acid white. As
Yeah,
long as it's high acid and white, so champagne could work. I mean, you could even do like an aligote from Burgundy. You could
wow.
do whatever you want, Chenin Blanc. Like, who cares?
Yeah, Chenin
As
Blanc's
long as it's,
nice.
yeah. I mean, and I don't know. You could probably do it with a red too. Maybe like a really light red. I don't know. Maybe
Beaujolais.
not Pinot Noir. Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah,
a Gamay or something. There's
Gamay
so many
Noir. Yeah,
options.
yeah,
I
definitely.
don't know that I would do that though, because again, there's still tannin, and so tannin, the bitterness in the skins of the grapes, there's chemical that reacts with fish oil, and it actually creates a really gross, like it's an actual thing that combines, and it's absolutely disgusting. It tastes,
Right.
it's a really bad, almost like rotten flavor that's
Oh.
created. And so that's why I say it's the greatest sin, because you buy this $1,000 bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon and you get this $200 caviar and you put it together and it creates the most gross combination ever.
There are better ways of spending money if you're going to pair the food and wine. But aside from the Cabernet and caviar, what are some of the more bizarre pairings you've been a witness to?
Bizarre, like bad or good? Or both?
Both. Why not both?
You know what I love with pizza? I just love Barbera and pizza. That's just my favorite thing ever. And I don't know, what did I drink this week? Oh, well, I mean, I know this is kind of like been done, but Gewürztraminer and Indian food, I actually tried it the other day, because Gewürztraminer, super powerful, kind of like spicy, like honeyness from Alsace. It's just like delicious. And paired with really fragrant Indian cuisine with cumin, and it's brilliant together, because with Indian food, it's very intense. Like you can usually, smell it when you're in the room. Yes. And Gewürztraminer is something that matches it in intensity. And so when you put them together, it was actually super brilliant. I tried it with my friend Olivia the other day and I was like, this is great.
Wow. Good pairing. That's a good. What about because obviously, my partner, she would always cook a lot of Southeast Asian food. Again, being from the Philippines, and there's a lot of talk about Rieslings being paired with Southeast Asian food. Would you say that's just more of a myth rather than a fact, or would you say that's more a matter of opinion rather than a fact, or would you say that is a go-to?
I have a very broad, different way of pairing food and wine. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, actually, because basically pairing food and wine is like decorating an apartment, right? And there's big pieces of furniture that the food and the wine bring, right? So the wine brings a certain level of acid, for instance, or sugar, and then the food brings charred, barbecued, whatever the method of preparation is, these big things. And so really, as long as the pieces of furniture kind of work together in the room, all of the aromas, all of the other nuances of the wine or the food are kind of like decorations, if that makes sense. Yeah. They're not like super important to the actual structure. So I believe that there's millions of different wines for one single dish, whereas some people are like, no, Chablis and oysters only, right? And I'm not like that. I think you can do whatever, and it doesn't matter. And sometimes if it doesn't work, you just drink water in between. But I've really never been like, oh, this is disgusting, this doesn't work together. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't care. And I feel like it's much more enjoyable, and it gives people the reins to be able to make choices, make mistakes, and just try new things. And so for a lot of Southeast Asian food, like, if there's, I know some Filipino really great pork dishes. I love Riesling with pork because it's high acid and it cuts through that fat. But you could, simultaneously, you could do something, I say, like, you can either balance or accentuate the dish. So if you had a high acid Riesling that cuts through the fat of the pork, that would be like balancing it, right? Because you're like canceling them out. Yes. But you could also accentuate the dish. So maybe you get something that's big and viscous and wide, like a Chardonnay with oak, right? Who knows what'll happen, right? Yes. And you just get to try new things. And it's funny because sometimes the balance, pairing is the one that people like the most. And sometimes it's the accentuate version. And it really, you just have to play around with it. Yeah, definitely.
All right. And obviously we were speaking before, via social media. And I remember I asked you, I said, have you ever been to the UK? Have you ever been to London? And you mentioned you hadn't yet. Once there is some normality in the world and we are allowed to travel, would you ever come over to London?
Yeah, of course. Are you kidding me? Everybody's so nice. And I love your accents. I want to hang out with you guys all the time. I feel smarter just being on this podcast with you right now. I do. I swear.
This is the last episode of the podcast now because of you. You've really massaged my ego there. Thank you so much. But but no, we were honestly, because we up until when lockdown happened, we had Adrian Hoffman who flew in purposely to do a podcast with us, and we had an intimate tasting at the Ivy in Richmond, and it was amazing. We do regular wine tasting events, and obviously if you are to to come over, would you be open to doing something like that with our clients, like giving us like a wine and food pairing like masterclass?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I'm always happy to do that. If I'm over there, dude, you're going to see me for sure. We've been friends for a few years. Like, I really believe that on social media, you kind of attract your own tribe. And I'm very open about how weird I am. And so I feel like a similar type of weirdness is attracted to me, like you know what I mean? We're both like, even though we might be very different and you might be a little bit more intelligent and articulate and stuff like that, we're still of the same vein and of the same mission and creating accessibility and getting people into it. And so I always try to make an effort to see people whenever I go places. I've never been to Europe because I was born in Japan. And so I would always go back home to Japan to visit my family. And so I've literally never gone to Europe. So I've been in New Zealand, but that's the only like really cool place I've gone.
And is there anywhere within Europe that you would like to go aside from, say, London?
I mean, I want to do the whole, just the everything. It's hard to choose. I'll get there eventually. That's why I think, having an online business was part of the appeal for me too, because I really like to travel and I like to go places. And so right now I think I'm just grinding, building the community here. And then, I would love to move over and build the community in other places and hang out and do fun stuff, but I would totally be down to hang out with all of you guys. I love
That's perfect. Thank you. And obviously going back to your natural, I said, entrepreneurial attitude, I wanted to make those changes. You mentioned recently you read a lot of books, most notably, or recently, shall I say, Who Moved My Cheese?
Well, it's a 26-page fable, but it's a great reminder of mindset. Yeah, classic. So
it is a classic. And in fact, I just finished reading one by Dr. Wayne Dyer. I can see clearly now. That's a game changer. That would just change your outlook completely. But for yourself, what are some of your other rituals, I suppose, which helps keep you grounded, helps keep you focused, and helps allow you, when we're dealing with adversity, to continue to push through? Aside from, the reading, would it be exercise based? Would it be the outlook on your life? Like, how do you approach life, I suppose?
Well, before we get off the book thing, I just want to say Blue Fishing by Steve Sims and the 4-Hour Work Week. It's so good. Blue Fishing and the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I'm a really big proponent of outsourcing. And that doesn't mean just to another country. That means outsourcing the things that I'm not good at. And so what I do is I rate the things that I do on a scale of 1 to 10 on how much I hate them. And the things that are rated the highest, I let other people do, because I want to leverage my strengths instead of focusing on my weaknesses. Because what happens with me is I will get so stressed because I am not using my time efficiently. And I'm wasting too much of emotional space in my brain and heart and mind, trying to do things that I suck at. And so every day when I feel stressed, because ultimately I've never been as busy as I am. I mean, I feel like I do get probably 500 emails a day, like, based on all the course signups or, notifications with that, course completions, like I get a lot of emails every day and a lot of requests from people that I don't want to miss. And honestly, sometimes I have these breakdowns, where I get overwhelmed and I miss things. And so it's constantly, I think, about refining. As I'm growing, I need to expand the way that I organize, that I need to, and also I sit for an hour every morning without my phone. I take 1 hour every morning and I get up early. So like 6 a.m. ish. And I do not look at my phone for an hour because I want to wake up and have peace before I start seeing the emails from the East Coast.
That's it. All right. And just lastly, again, I'm very envious of a lot of the wines you've been able to to deal with yourself and obviously, you know, sample. But is there one, I suppose, that is on that bucket list, whether it's a specific brand or, you know, from a specific region and a specific vintage here, that you're like, okay, this is like, I suppose, your I've made it moment. Not literally like, okay, that, you know, whoopie-doo, I'm done now, but you're like, this is why I got involved in this in the first place.
Yeah, I very clearly, I 59 Obrion and 61 Margot.
Wow.
I had them at the same time. Somebody gifted them to Wolfgang, actually. It was his birthday, I think. And they had me open it. They were serving it, and they told me, of course, like, taste it. And I cried. Because I never liked Bordeaux. I was opposite from you. I tasted all this Bordeaux, you know, because at Spago, people would bring in all of their collectible wines, which was really awesome. But I just didn't, you know, younger Bordeaux, it's cool, you know, 82 Lafite. Oh, okay. Like, it was good, but it wasn't like soul passion evoking. I could see how it's very good. So no shade to that, you know, producer or anything, but it's more about like, I didn't fully get it. And then I got it. When I had, you know, the 61 Margot, I felt like, wow, like, this is what wine is like, and this is why people like Bordeaux so much. This is why they hold it, because it was on a completely different level. And I really did like shed a tear. Like, I just had to.
I can relate. There, absolutely. So, all right. So for me, like, my greatest one was the Penfolds Grange 2008. You know that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was. I was fortunate enough that Robert Parker was actually doing a tour of Europe back in 2014, and so he was at this major like fine wine shop called Hedonism Wines, which I will take you to when you do come over. You would love it, and you got to sample like several, you know, 100 point scoring wines, and the Penfolds Grange 2008 for me was just, it was just, I still remember it to this day. It's really, well, once it's ingrained, you know, and it's really good. But all right, just lastly then, you mentioned, of course, Bordeaux. Yeah, it's not exactly hit and miss you, but it's not, yes, it's Bordeaux. What for you is your go-to region?
Oh, that's so hard. Honestly, well, I can tell you some wines that I like.
Okay.
Well, I really enjoy Alsace just in general.
Yes.
I think it's just so complex and just beautiful and everything. I usually like it. That'll always make me happy. Chateauneuf, if I just am having, you know, I don't really like very tannic heavy reds for the most part. Like, in the right scenario, sure. But if I'm just like enjoying on my day off, you know, I just usually don't. I think it just has to do with palate fatigue a little bit, because it's just heavy. But Torbreck Runrig. Oh, one of my favorite wines. It's Aussie Shiraz from Barossa, and it is ridiculously good. If you have not had it, I highly recommend it immediately. It's the only like group of wines that I have in my fridge right now that I really don't touch. Really, 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 like, I would cry if somebody opened them, because aged Torbreck Runrig is insanely good. If you like Aussie Shiraz, you got to do it.
Cristie, you're preaching to the converted, honestly, right? This is, could you just see there's that box just there, Torbreck, on the ground. Could you open it? Like, literally, this is an empty bottle. I don't know if you see it, but it's not the Runrig. I thought it's the lead. It's the lead.
Okay, that's a good one. I like Runrig personally.
Oh no, Runrig is amazing. It is insane. It's beautiful, and well, we've got a box here which I don't think can be opened, but it's the Struy, still Torbreck, but still, no, Torbreck, absolutely. That's no. You'll have a great time when you come here. Honestly, you'll leave with a few bottles as well. That's for sure. But fine. No, Cristie, I wanted to say honestly, massive thank you for joining us. Honestly, really appreciate. You've got a lot going on. As I said, you taking the time out to obviously do this with us. Really, thank you. Whatever we can do to help support your causes, we will definitely, do for you as well. I just want to say thank you very much. And for those who are interested in any online wine courses, feel free to click on the links that we will be providing. Be educational, be fun. You get to drink some great wine, and more importantly, you will have more confidence when we're allowed back into the restaurant. So thank you very much for joining us.